Welcome back. If you just joined us, we've been looking at revamping Nigeria's basic education with so much depressing statistics in the sector. And our guest on this episode of Question Time is the Executive Secretary of the Universal Basic Education Commission, Dr. Hamid Boboyi. Stay with us. Issues of finance would always remain delicate. So at the state level, how often do you conduct this periodic exercise of monitoring the budgetary expenditure of UBEC funds at the state levels?
Quarterly. We do that on a quarterly basis. Every quarter, our financial monitors go out, also supported by, in many of the instances, the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation that looks at those issues. And that's the reason why at the end of the year, we make certain decisions.
Now, you talked about the strategy of closing the UBEC accounts in some of these states where it's been discovered that the counterpart funds has been withdrawn. Is this a new innovation? Because one wonders how, because it's also been on record that some of these state governments have been able to withdraw their funds. So how come they were able to do that? Is this a new strategy?
There are some states where it will be the bank that actually withdraws, because usually some of these monies for quite some time, isn't it, were being borrowed from, there were loans from commercial banks that the states were taking. And at the end of the day, isn't it, you find that the banks actually, isn't it, when they see that the political atmosphere, isn't it, was getting a little bit cloudy, they will withdraw their funds. And then leave a situation whereby UBEC has got no option but to close down the accounts. There are certain instances where certain pressures would come, and I think we have a litany of these situations, isn't it? And UBEC has always taken action on this issue. That where violations, isn't it? Based on the law that established the commission, are made in terms of financial, within the financial, isn't it? Management of those resources that are given states, isn't it? UBEC never hesitated.
Now, let's come back to your mandate. At the assumption of your office, you promised Nigerians that you're going to revamp basic education in Nigeria. So how far have you gone in pursuing this mandate?
There were a lot of things on the ground. I think, we had various discussions with a lot of stakeholders at the level of UBEC itself, at the level of SUBEBs, at the level of other stakeholders, to sit down and map out where do we have the greatest challenges that we can begin addressing, and how do we go about it. And I think it's something that we started as early as September, isn't it? Looking at different issues, meeting with different people, generating ideas, and also beginning to plan.
Let's come to the issue of Nigerian teachers now. We have a very depressing statistics too, that about 50% of Nigerian teachers lack the required qualifications to teach.
In some states, over 60%.
So what are you doing that? Because
that
you have your work cut out.
In that particular regard, isn't part of the announcement, from the Federal Ministry of Education that we report to, is that stipulation that in the next 2 years, if you cannot get the minimum qualification of NCE, please say bye-bye to the classroom. People who are not qualified to do so, we have a very serious problem. But not only that, again, you need to professionally ensure that this teacher, isn't it, is trained and retrained, even those who are qualified. UBEC spends, it gives each and every state in a year 120 million for that particular purpose.
You are raising the issue of UBEC pumping about 120 million naira yearly for the training of teachers. And what we are seeing still leaves a huge gap in terms of having qualified teachers. So obviously, if these funds are not working, isn't it possible for UBEC to coordinate this arrangement of teaching the Nigerian teachers on its own, rather than releasing the funds to the state government?
The issue is about, the teacher professional development, isn't it? You come to find that the monies are given. There are varieties of training programs that the state is expected to engage in. And UBEC monitors these particular training programs. You have, the cascade training model, isn't it? Where people are gathered in one place, isn't it? And train on a particular issue. You have the cluster models, where clusters of primary basic education institutions in different parts of the country, and this is a very extensive exercise.
We also have another disturbing trend where Nigeria is home to 10.5 million out-of-school children. What are you doing to get these children back to classroom to gain access to quality and inclusive education?
Definitely, because I think it's a statistic that worries each and every stakeholder within the education sector. The figures differ. In fact, you are very generous to say that it's 10.5 million out-of-school children. The last statistics, after the insurgency in the Northeast, the displays getting to about 2 million people, isn't it? Out of that, isn't it? We got added another 1 million out-of-school children because these children, isn't it? Could not go back to their own basic education institutions, isn't it? And had also been left out. So we are talking of a figure which is above 10.5 at the moment, isn't it? About 11.5. Others even put it higher. When we came in, we instituted, isn't it, a committee to look at the figures, isn't it, and find out exactly the source of these particular, of the out-of-school children phenomenon. Unfortunately, Benga, we have to go back to a situation where I think about 10 states contribute about 75% of the population. And all these states are in the north, where the issues of the girl child education becomes, isn't it, a very, very, very serious problem that needs to be looked at. It involves change of behavior, change of attitude and behavior, where people will realize that educating girls has to be done and be done quickly if we really want our society to move forward. The second aspect that is very serious, the second component of that out-of-school children phenomenon is also the issue of the Almajiri population.
We understand that the World Bank is proposing a $500 million intervention fund in the Nigerian education sector. What are the priority areas of this intervention?
The World Bank is proposing, isn't it, I think negotiating with Nigeria in trying to put in, isn't it, $500 million, but not as a grant, as credit, to mop up that particular aspect of the out-of-school children phenomenon that we have. They would want to intervene initially in 13 states that have the highest, they go with the statistics, or by the statistics. Looking at the various states, what do we have in terms of the contribution of each state to that particular problem, and then finding ways in which they can focus on results, not on inputs.
Now, moving away from the rhetorics of where the state of education in Nigeria is now to how we can move the sector forward. Because it's understandable that many of these issues were even before your assumption of office. So what are your own plans to change the reality of Nigerian education sector?
I think we need to up the ante, where we can now talk of modeling, of building that kind of centers of excellence that we expect, what we expect of the future of basic education in Nigeria. The kind of institutions that we need other schools to look up to.
Dr. Hamid Boboyi, the Executive Secretary, Universal Basic Education Nigeria, thank you so much for making our time to be part of this episode of Question Time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Benga, for the invitation.
Yeah. And that's it on this episode of Question Time. What do you think about Nigeria's standard of education? Send us your comments on our various social media platforms showing on your screen. Join us next week on another exciting episode of the show on Channels Television. Many thanks for watching. I'm Benga Ashur, signing out.